Hello guys, I'm Super Ron, welcome back to the channel, and we're here again at Auto Shack and we have got another Audi RS4. But stay tuned because this is not a carbon clean episode. This week we're working on the other Achilles heel of these B7s, and that is the DRC suspension. So this is a 2006 B7 RS4, and this is one of our regular customers. You saw his other car on a previous episode, and that was the stunning Mark IV Golf R32 that we had the whole engine and box out to do the timing chains, and this is his other pride and joy. As you saw from that episode, he's really keen on the OEM Plus, having everything factory looking to the highest standard, using genuine parts and keeping these rare cars going. You've actually heard me talk about this particular car in many previous videos where we're doing the carbon cleans, and we say we always take out the swirl flaps because we've had them come off in the past and destroy the engine. Well, this was that car. This is the one where the bolts came out, the swirl flap went into the engine and completely chewed it up, destroyed the pistons, ruined the head, mashed all the valves and made a load of chaos. And at that point, most people with these cars cut their losses. Parts for these are horrendously expensive, hard to get hold of, especially on these V8 engines. When they were only putting these and the R8, people would just break them down and try and salvage some costs back and start again somewhere else. But when we had a meeting with the customer, we went through all his options, and I'm really glad he did. He gave the green light to go ahead and rebuild the engine. We stripped it right down, sent it out to an engine specialist, had to have new pistons, some repair work done on the head, there had to be slightly oversized bores, thankfully keeping all the coating intact, and I was in my element with the whole engine gearbox out, building it all back up on the stand and putting it back in the car. So he's done nearly 10,000 miles and it is still absolutely sweet. It still comes in for its regular services and MOTs every year. So the problem we're here to sort today is the DRC suspension, which stands for Dynamic Ride Control. That is the Audi suspension system of this era of RS cars. My C5 RS6 had it as well. And what it is, it's a hydraulic link between the two corners. So this side front and that side rear are hydraulically linked in the shock absorbers, and this side rear and that side front are linked hydraulically, and they have small canisters at the back which regulate the pressure. And how it works, when the car tilts this way and that shock comes up, that pumps fluid to this side, which gives incredible handling, but without the rough ride usually associated with stiff suspension. As they get older, the DRC system is very troublesome and very expensive to fix. They're getting to the age where the shock absorbers are starting to leak, and they're about £500 a corner. The DRC lines, they have hard lines underneath the car, a bit like brake lines, but much larger, and they're starting to rust and corrode. So the usual step of any problems in DRC is just to take them off and fit coilovers. On my RS6, the previous owner must have had some problems with the DRC because he replaced the shock absorbers with Coney upgrades, so mine hasn't got the DRC installed anymore, which is a shame because we've had a lot of RS4s in, so I have been able to compare the DRC ride with coilovers ride, and these rides so much nicer. It's lovely and smooth on a casual drive, but as soon as you start throwing it into the corners, it handles fantastically, so you get the best of both worlds. But like I said, that comes at a price for maintaining it. So the owner has started having the dreaded knock from the offside rear. So we've had a look and it looks like one of the DRC lines is leaking at the back. Hopefully that is all it is, and they're still available from Audi, and you can get the Flexies as well. So we're going to replace the rear lines, and then it needs to go to Audi because that needs to be recharged. It's hydraulic fluid and they run at incredibly high pressure. There's a special machine that you need to plug into the sockets, a bit like an aircon regas, but for the suspension. They do go up and over the subframe, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to have to take off or how far I'm going to have to drop it. So let's get it on the ramp and see how it goes. Right, so looking around under here, we could see some fluid dropping in this corner here. We can see it on the subframe and kind of just a bit on the chassis there. You can see it dripping on the bottom of the anti-roll bar link and on the exhaust. It looked all dry this side. So we started looking at the state of the lines, and they were looking quite corroded up there just above it. So that is where the fluid's leaking from. It's emptied the shock, so that's why it's docking. You can see the Flexies there. You can see that hard line going to it is looking a bit on the rough side. These are the canisters at the back where they link hydraulically through. And that's where all the pipes come to from each corner. One goes right to the front. But they're not looking the best, but we are looking all dry this side. That goes there. So it looks like we've got some kind of problem up on this side, so we're going to take the Flexies out and try and get these pipes out. And these are the new bits, all still available from Audi. They got them straight out to us, so these go from the canister. They've got little like brake fittings on each end. then they go to the flexies, and then the flexies go to the shocks. So we're going to renew the rear end, and that should be all nice. So let's see if we can get it stripped. One side all done, the easy side. I've managed to drop the subframe this side just enough to be able to get my hands up in there. Everything's still attached, the prop and everything, and the bolts are still in the other side. But I've got the spring and everything out to let me get my hands actually up in there. The shock's dropped as well. Brake lines are disconnected, and now I can get to this line that comes out of the canister, goes up and over the fuel filler, so I'm going to have to release that. And you can see that rusty one up there, goes up and over the subframe, and it follows along. You can see the rusty one underneath the brake line there, off to the flexi. So let's get this out. And what hard work that was, but it is in. I ended up dropping the tank this side and the filler as well so I could get over it, but I managed to get it all running all the way in its factory position without bending it out of shape, keeping all its correct profiles so it's tucked nice and close to the chassis, over the top of all the fillers there, and back round to its little mounting point where it comes round to the flexi. But there was not a lot of room. That was hard work without destroying it. But now both sides are on. This one's much easier. As you can see, there's nothing in the way of this one, and that just pops right out to the flexi. The only worry is we can see the ends of the fronts here, and they're just as bad, so we're going to check them out too. And under tray's off, and surprisingly under here, where the protection was, you can see the silver lines there. These are absolutely pristine. They're bright silver, just like the new ones that I have just fitted. And they've been under here the same amount of time. But unfortunately, where the covers weren't, they're just as rusty as what the rears were. So you can see they're bright silver along here. Then they pop out of the under trays, go up to the flexis. You can see just there, really quite rusty. So we're not going to risk these. We've looked them up. See, they're quite rusty there. We're going to replace these while it's all off. It's only the prop holding it on. It's a shame because they're so clean here. Why can't they all be like that? So prop off, subframe down, get these out.
And that is the subframe dropped out. They are pretty easy to do on these because the calipers and brake lines all stay attached to the body. All you've got to disconnect is an ABS sensor, the level sensor, ABS the other side, disconnect the prop from the front, and that is about it. The springs all come out with it, and we are good. And now under here you can see the state of the front ones. So it could even be the front one that was leaking under there. Here's the front one on the other side. So we have just ordered them up, but as you can see underneath where the splash guards were covering, they're perfect. but where they're left out in the elements, they just completely rust up. So they run along here and up to the flexies each side. So we've got a few more little bits to do, and then we can get that off. So just got the fronts off to line up, and we may have to reconsider how we carry on, because I've unfortunately just found a leaky shock. So this could halt this whole operation, and we might be going to a set of coilovers. So we're going to speak to the customer now, because just the front lines weren't too bad, a few more £100, but if we've got to put a shock on as well, and this side's a bit wet in there as well, this might be the end of the DRC. We'll see what the customer wants to do, because like I say, he's not shy of spending money in the right departments. So if he does want to keep this all nice and original, it might be a pair of shocks as well. And after a lot of wiggling and a lot of tweaking, we are all back on. So we've got the lines going all the way down to the front, all into the valves, all the way up to all the corners, and it pops out. Lines right up to the front there, and all the way up to the front there. I've already got this leg in, so we'll get the flexes in and get these connected up. And just to protect them, we're going to give them a good wax injection, and then I can drop the car back on the subframe. And here is the state of the fronts. It's in a pretty bad way. Most of them just broke as I was wiggling them out. They were ready to burst. So all the new ones are in, and I've just waxed them all, so we won't have this trouble again. Here's the old one off, and the new one comes just as a bare shock, so we've got to swap the perch and everything over onto that. And they've also revised the dust shields, so we've got this nice rubber one instead of this plastic one, so that might be some of the reason why the dirt gets in there and they blow. So got our tools out, let's get this swapped over. And we've done our old trick in here of these pinch bolts never come out, so disconnected it from the inners, both sides, and the triangle comes out with it and the arms stay in, so that just saves not snapping this bolt off. Going down. Ah, yeah. Do that. Yeah, go and do it again. Alright. Yeah. Someone's had all the pies. Yeah, it's in. It's in on the bottom. Back in. Woo. And that's the subframe all back in. Just needed a bit of super on weight on the back because the springs actually go on the chassis, so that's pushing it away. But that's all on. and it's been quite nice that we don't have to do anything with the calipers or the brake lines. They'll just go straight back on, won't need bleeding. But we've got all our new pipes in, so drive shaft to torque up, heat shields and exhaust back on, and we'll be ready to go back on the ground. I was just about to mark the torqued up bolts with the trusty paint pen, and I noticed they've all come lined up with the marks that I put on there when I put the engine back in. So they must be right. And same here, the lines are still there, all lined up. And we are all torqued up. So we got new genuine arms, genuine shocks, new flexies there. Same on this side, new arms, shocks, and we've got the CV boot this side as well. We've got our new flexies, our new lines, running all the way back, beside the tank, over the subframe now, and pop out into the valves. So now we can put all the under trays back on and cover these up. The ABS wires are under the back seat, so I've just lifted that up, and it's always fun doing a bit of archaeology in people's cars. Got 50p, sweet. Some wrappers, like a fake fingernail, hopefully a fake, and he's not a serial killer. Trip to the wildlife gallery, and just noticed a USB drive. So it's funny what you find under seats. But these were our wires that go to the ABS sensor. These ones, because this is an RS4, are for the heated seats to go into the base of the seat. And the ABS plug is just there, and that disappears into the floor, so you just got to fish that through. And that's the exhaust back on, all the under trays covering the valves back on, splash guards, all the trims covering up the pipes. Now we can do what it actually came in and give it a service. So we are back on the ground, and all that's left to do now is to take it to Audi and get them to recharge the DRC system. It smells very much like power steering fluid, so I think it's just a hydraulic, but it's a special machine that you need. Now it's on the floor. It's quite funny because the shock absorbers have no fluid in them, so it just carries on bouncing. It's just on the spring, so you can't drive it like this because it will just bottom out and destroy the new shocks. So we'll get this transported to Audi, and it's ready for the customer to have back. And here are what we're left with. So like I said, they're very expensive. Each one of these shocks is around £500. Each one of these flexies is over £200. I think the short lines at the back were about £250. The long lines were nearer to £400. So you can see why people usually just cut their losses and move on. But once all primed up, this is going to be amazing. Ever since I got my RS6 and I knew the DRC system had been disconnected, I have toyed with the idea of putting it back on. All my lines are still on the car underneath, they just haven't got the flexies on anymore, and obviously haven't got the shocks. They do ride great with the DRC, but they are just so expensive. There's probably about £3,000 worth of parts just here that have been replaced today. But what I have noticed when we were researching, looking where to get these from, if there's any other options, on eBay at the minute, there is about 10 pairs of C5 RS6 DRC shocks, brand new in the Audi boxes, and they're only going for about £70 a shock. You can get the full set for £250. So Audi must have finally discontinued selling these for the C5 RS6, and all the old stock has somehow found its way on eBay. The problem is when you're talking £200 a flexi, and then I don't know the condition of my lines, they can be as bad as this. Unfortunately, I'm just not as passionate at keeping it factory as the customer of the RS4. This is an amazing spec inside. It's got the iconic wing backs.
It's got the flat bottom steering wheel. Of course, all these B7s are 6-speed manuals. It's even got the period correct phone holder still in the dash. So we've just got the car back from Audi, it's fully recharged, everything went nicely, and now it's ready back for the customer. So this job certainly escalated. What came in for just an MOT and service, and just having a little look at the DRC, has resulted in a complete overhaul. 4 shocks, 4 flexies, and 4 hard lines. The only original parts are the little valves at the back, but what this does mean that the system now should last another 16 years and another 100,000 miles. It does take a lot of guts and a lot of money to keep a car like this up to factory standard, which makes me so pleased that we have got the customers that we've got that are passionate about their cars as we are. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode and it's given you a little look into the DRC suspension, how involved it is and how expensive it is. But you will not find a better B7 RS4 than this. It's got the full Miltech exhaust on at the moment, but it's still got the factory one. So with that bolted on, this could be a real time warp car. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure you give it a like and be sure to tune in next time because there's no telling what we've got in. But until next time, make sure you have fun.